Welcome back to another episode. This is Layla, and today we are discussing the frequency of intent and how to avoid karma and what is karma. So, to fully understand this concept, we have to understand that the word karma means action. So, a lot of times when people refer to karma, it usually sounds negative, right? But karma can actually be positive depending on the dharma, depending on the actions that were taken. And to get even a step further, it's not even about the action, it's about the frequency of intent. So what is the frequency of the intention behind the action? So a lot of celebrities, powerful people are being exposed, right? Especially in the past few months. And a lot of them have been using dark energy and dark matter in the past decade, 20 plus years to become famous, to become wealthy, and to have power. Which is one of the reasons why a lot of people are afraid of dark energy, because they associate it with abuse of power. They're associated with, sacrificing children, which, we're going to get into another episode. We're going to get into this in another episode, but unfortunately, occult knowledge has been associated with that because people have been misusing it. So, when it comes to karma, so what's been happening right now, especially with these celebrities that have been harnessing, energy and really abusing of their power. Their intent while abusing other people was to control them, right? The intent was ego-based. The intent was fear-based, because sometimes when you have someone, a lot of times when you have someone who tries to control other people, especially when you have a man trying to control the feminine energy, it's usually from a place of subconscious fear, right? He's afraid, he's insecure, so he thinks the only way, he can have a woman, or women can, bow to him or whatever the fuck he wants is by controlling them. And of course, I'm not laughing at the situation. It's just, I'm just laughing at the absurdity of the situation, right? Because it's the opposite. Like, if a man wants to, keep a woman and wants the woman to be, open and feminine to him, he has to embody the highest masculine traits, which is the opposite of control. So what's been happening is that, of course, a lot of celebrities have been using dark matter, dark energy, and these occult knowledge to create and build their career successfully, right? Because a lot of them have been, very wealthy, very famous, very powerful. But if the frequency of the intention was fear-based, which is most of them, I would say, they're actually getting bad karma now. It took a while, but it's happening right now. And this is especially due to the energy of Lilith coming back to the earth, which is the dark feminine aspect of the earth. And she's ruthless, and people are getting their karma. People are getting their bad karma because of that. But there's a huge but. So if the intent behind an action is actually love-based, so it's based in love and the purity of the heart, then there's not going to be any bad karma. For example, let me just give like a random example. If you witness a person being abusive to a child, for example, right? Which is absolutely horrific. And let's say you go to the police station, CPS, and they don't do anything because you don't have any, solid proof or whatever the fuck they need to like arrest that person, which is most of the time very complicated. So let's say you're a psychic, right? And you're aware of your manifestation capabilities. You're aware that you're a goddess. Then, because you want to protect that child, which is, children are directly connected to source, right? They most of them are fearless. Most of them, especially when they're very young. So they're just like pure, right? They're just pure love. So if you're trying to protect that child and you take down that person that is hurting them, but it's coming from a place of love, you're not going to get bad karma. So that's where it gets very, I would say, complex, because a lot of times you're going to hear spiritual teachers being like, yes, if you have ill intents for someone, like, you're going to manifest negativity in your life and blah, blah, blah. And then people are like, love and light and rainbows and unicorns, like, everybody should be, dealt with compassion and all that stuff. And that is not the truth. And I just explained the complexity of the situation. But basically, it is rooted in the intent, in the frequency of the intention. That's what it is. Now, obviously, it gets more complex when we think about the subconscious intent. But of course, in an obvious situation like that, if you're trying to protect a child or an animal, there are no rules. Like, you can take down someone, because if you just sit there and pray for them, I hate that phrase, if you pray for them and you just send them love and light, like, that child is gonna get abused for like the next 10 plus years, right? And this has been going on for such a long time, like thousands of years. And I feel like a lot of women don't know that, like, they don't know how powerful they can be. Of course, we have to use this power with integrity. You don't want to give someone bad karma because, like, let's say a guy didn't text you back, like, please don't do that, like, because obviously that would be ego based, right? That would be, because you don't like being rejected and blah blah blah. Like, that's like the little wounded feminine girl in you that's trying to get back at him. But that would be rooted in fear or in subconscious fear of being rejected. It's ego based, right? Because fear is ego. So in that specific case, you're gonna get bad karma for doing that, So there is this type of they call it the law of Mat in ancient Egypt. So it's like, it's cosmic order, and no one can escape it. But of course, if you have someone, which is another complex way to explain this, is that if you have, for example, a narcissistic person, right? When they're hurting someone, they don't think that they're doing something bad necessarily, because they're so self-centered. And they just think about their own goals and aspirations, and they don't care about the collective. They don't care about society. But still, once again, the intention is rooted in ego. So once again, they're going to get bad karma at some point in their life. And that's what's happening right now to a lot of people in the elite. And I think a lot of them thought they would be able to escape karma because they've been so powerful and so wealthy for such a long time. For some families, it's been, generations, and it's been like hundreds of years, right, that they've been powerful. So I don't think they've been expecting what's happening right now. And so another thing as well about karma is that a lot of people, especially the ones that think that they're separate from God, right? They're separate from their goddess self. They usually say things like, oh, this person is going to get their karma, but they leave it up to like some something, right? They just leave it up to like someone else, which is not how karma works. For example, in that specific case of, you witnessing a child or hearing about a child being abused, blah, 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 or you have this like intuition, you're a psychic, you know what's going on. Because you are a witness in some way, shape, or form, you have this responsibility of protecting that child. You have this responsibility. So you can't just be like, oh, let me just go to the police and leave it up in their hands and just go home and continue with my day. Like, no, if you witness that and you know how to manifest and you're a goddess, you're the one giving them karma. And the only thing, once again, just like anything in manifestation, the how is not your job. You just have to call them out, not to them, but to like, you just have to like speak it into existence. Don't confront them directly, because that's not a good idea, especially if they're like a predator. Like, you don't want anyone attacking you like physically. But I'm saying, like, you have to say out loud that this person is now getting their karma because they're hurting a child. And of course you can do that, and of course go to the police station and do the whole like process, right? But if worse come to worse, like if whatever, the police does not take the case or whatever, at least that this person is gonna get their karma. But like I said, the how is not your job. Like, how is that person gonna get karma? Like, you don't know, like, because that's the thing, like, you're not omnipresent. Like, you don't know what would be the worst thing to do to that person, But at least if you call out their karma and you're like, this person is getting bad karma for doing whatever the fuck they're doing to that child, then, you're going to accelerate the process for sure. And you're actually going to help that child. You're going to protect that child. And you're going to protect a lot of other children, because, God knows how many children that person has been hurting or is going to hurt. So yeah, that's what it is with karma, and that's why there's a lot of contradicting information about karma. But yeah, and of course there are ways to create good karma in your life, especially if you've gone through a lot of negativity or you've gone through some stuff, right? Which we all do at some point. You can use the law of rhythm to create good karma in your life. And this is something you can easily do. It's actually an exercise. It's the law of math exercise. You can buy a scale if you want to, like, these like vintage, like old school one. And you basically write on a piece of paper, what happened to you in the past. Let's say, that's just like a really simple example. But let's say like you were living in scarcity, right? So you've had a lot of situations where there were a lot of power imbalances because you didn't have money, and then you had to like submit to like a boss or a corporation, blah, 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 so you would write down on a piece of paper on one side of the scale. You can also do it just by writing it down, honestly, using dark matter, of course. You're writing, with black ink or in a black journal, doing it at night. And on the other side of the scale, you can also, by the way, draw the scale. And on the other side of the scale, you're going to write down what you want to create, which usually it's the contrast, right? The polar opposites. So let's say you've gone through these like power imbalances with money, a lot of power struggles. So the opposite of that would be that you are a powerful person now. You have all the resources, network, freedom, peace, bliss, whatever the fuck you want. And so you basically create the end, which is, that's like a very powerful exercise. This is something that we can use to also do alchemy in our life as well. When they say turn your pain into power, turn your trauma into power, that's like one of the ways to do it as well, because you get to do what your soul ultimately wants you to do, because your soul doesn't want you to like struggle and suffer your whole life, right? It wants you to experience pure love and joy. So another example of a situation like that would be, for example, if you didn't have love from your father as a a heterosexual woman, right? Let's say you're attracted to men, so you didn't have love from your father was not present, blah, blah, whatever the situation is, you write it down. And then the polar opposite of that would be that you are in a conscious, healthy relationship with a very grounded, safe, masculine man who's also your protector. That's the polar opposite. Usually when we come to Earth, most of the times we want to experience contrast, because if you always had, like, let's say you grew up and you always had what you wanted, then your consciousness wouldn't expand, like you wouldn't grow, because you would remain the same your whole life, if that makes sense. So a lot of times we come to this life to experience these contrasts, and no one should make you feel guilty or shameful about, any desires that you have, because usually a lot of times, people are like, oh, you didn't have a father, then, you have daddy issues, you don't need a partner. Like, people tell you a bunch of negative stuff. So it's best to just keep it to yourself and to understand that your soul is here to experience contrast. So if you grew up in poverty, if you grew up without love, then of course your soul wants you to experience the polar opposite now, and especially when you start to use the law of rhythm, you can also decide when, because that's life, like there's cycles, right? Things cannot always be good, like there's good and bad days. But the thing is, for example, if you had a bad day, it just came to mind. So if you had a bad day, things didn't go your way for whatever reason, you can decide that the next day, like you can do alchemy, like in your day-to-day life, like the next day, you can write down like, okay, so I had a bad day today, but tomorrow, tomorrow is going to be this and that. And you can just go into details about how you want your day to go. And of course, once again, don't micromanage your manifestation. Just write down the emotions. Okay, I had a bad day today, but tomorrow I'm going to feel so much joy and happiness and pleasure. And it's just going to be a fun day, it's just going to be so memorable. So at least you're kind of I don't like using the word control. You're not controlling your reality, but you're being more mindful instead of just going with the flow. When we're go, just go with the flow. Yeah, go with the flow. Once you know what you want, once you connect with your heart and your heart's desires, don't just be a slave to life where you just get thrown from left to right and you're I don't have any power. No, you do. Actually, you are source. You can bring your wishes and desires to yourself. But the how and how it's going to come to you and what date, at what time, what hour, that's not you doing that. That's more of I would say how do I explain that? That would be the goddess frequency, or the yeah, I would say that would be the goddess, allow Mother Earth to provide it to you. Basically, that's what it means. All right, so that's it for today's episode. Let me know if you have any questions, suggestions for next episodes, and yeah, I'll see you tomorrow.